There are two ways to be fooled. One is to believe what is not true. The other is to refuse to accept what is true. Soren Kierkegaard. Good evening, everybody. Hope everyone is doing okay. I'm gonna dispense with the usual introduction, just go right to the topic. Excuse me. So here we go. Right. So I kind of compiled this information, or just wrote this down today, because I was thinking about it for a while. And I thought it would be useful for some people, but who knows? We'll see. I just kind of reinterpreted it to kind of differentiate it between each of these different definitions of, for example, beliefs, knowledge, and truth. And there is a picture that let's see, that I had. You can see it was actually a little bit different when I actually found this on the internet. I just redid everything a little bit. I think truth was to the left and knowledge to the right and belief in the middle, or whatever order it was. But of course, you can also reorder it however way you see fit. But to me, you've got belief on one side, knowledge on the other. And kind of in between them is what is, but also what isn't. And we're going to get a little bit more into that. So, beliefs is an acceptance of a thing without knowledge or truth. The example that I use, and there's many examples that you can use, is a child believes in the tooth fairy because their parents told them about it. And when they leave their tooth under their pillow before they go to sleep, when they wake up, instead of a tooth, there's something other than a tooth. Most people use something like money, whatever. So that's a belief because they've been told something, and that something would happen if they did this. They don't understand. They don't have any knowledge about it from anyone else. That's just what they know. And thus, well, what happens? They put their tooth under the pillow, they wake up in the morning, there's $1 under their bed instead of their tooth, and therefore they go, well, the tooth fairy must exist because I was told the tooth fairy existed, and that why would my parents lie, type of thing. It's until later when they either question or experiment or just ask around about the tooth fairy, because who knows, they're gonna be like, well, I want to know what the tooth fairy looks like. What does a tooth fairy look like? It's like they just want to know more about it. Anyone who believes in something should want to know more about it. They want to gain some knowledge about what they believe in, what they accept, which is great. Because knowledge, and moving on, knowledge is an understanding of a thing, whether or not it is believed or true. So you can have a lot of knowledge about something. It could be totally false. It could be totally not true. But that's still knowledge because you understand it. But on the other hand, you can have a knowledge of something that is true. You can have a lot of knowledge of something, whether you believe it or not. Now, an example that I use is the parents understand the tradition of the tooth fairy, and that the tradition is to tell their children a tale of the tooth fairy. And when their child is asleep, they sneak in to remove the tooth from under the pillow and replace it with something like money or candy or whatever they want to use to replace it. And so they whether they believe in the tooth fairy or not, whether they accept it, or whether it's true that there really is a tooth fairy, they just don't know. They go with the traditions. They understand the entire concept of it. And then when they want to get to the truth, which is the validity of a thing, regardless if it is believed or understood, however, it should be accepted and understood. That's the I don't know what you would call it. It's just the essential part of a truth. It's everyone should understand and believe the truth, except most people don't. They'll usually accept and understand the opposite of what the truth is, and that's because, well, they just grow up and not necessarily challenge that concept of what other people told them. Now, there's a couple scenarios that you can use within the same examples that I've been using. For example, if the child loses a tooth but doesn't tell their parents, when the child wakes up, they put their tooth under the pillow. They didn't tell their parents. I think this happened to me. When the child wakes up, there's still a tooth under the pillow. Like the parents didn't know about it, so they didn't know to put something under the pillow, and take the tooth out. So the child at that point no longer, well, it's still questioned. They may still believe in the tooth fairy, but now they got a little bit more knowledge. It's like, okay, well, if I don't tell my parents about the tooth and I put it under my pillow, well, the tooth fairy doesn't seem to come. So maybe the parents, they go do something to talk to the tooth fairy and say, hey, child lost a tooth. If you want to come over, whatever, right? They'll probably still think of it that way. Eventually, they may know the truth by being told otherwise or whatever. So now on the other side, the parents, they may have an understanding of the tooth fairy, but they also may not accept it or believe it because, well, when they don't replace the tooth with something in the morning, if they know about the tooth being under the pillow, well, if they don't do anything like replacing tooth with money or whatever, there's still a tooth under the pillow in the morning. So obviously, if they don't take on the role of being the tooth fairy, well, the tooth fairy doesn't really come and do what the tooth fairy was traditionally told to do, right? So the parents know that, well, the traditional story of the tooth fairy coming in and removing a tooth and putting something in it in return doesn't really happen because, well, if they don't do it, well, nothing happens. So they know what is true in that instance, and they know that there really isn't a tooth fairy. I mean, there may be a tooth fairy, but the tooth fairy that is told in the tradition that it's told and what the tooth fairy does, that doesn't happen. Okay, so that's just the examples of beliefs, knowledge, and truth. What you want to get to is the truth, really. And you can have the truth or know the truth without any understanding or acceptance of anything. But you may have to work backwards. You've kind of gained some knowledge of it, and you just kind of accept it. It's almost like sitting in between in some cases, and maybe we'll get more to that. Let's see. Let's move on to the next one. I should also make sure that I hide myself so you can actually see what I'm writing. But anyways, let's move on. So Magick versus Magick. So I was kind of learning a little bit more about both in some ways, and just kind of formulating why would there be an initial difference in how would this really work. I mean, you could probably use both Magick, and that would probably be the most powerful thing for a magician, is to have both types of magic at your disposal. All right, so the magic without the K. I know you're going to have to do a little bit more research if you don't know anything about it, and if you do, well, you could go ahead and chime in if I seem to take it a different direction than what is traditional, and I meant to do that. So magic is based on illusion, which is trickery and lies, and it's what do I say? It's used for multiple purposes. It doesn't have to be good. It doesn't have to be bad. It's just used. And but the thing is, the underlying thing is it's still based on trickery and lying. You could tell the truth about what you're doing, but you're still using trickery and lying. Not necessarily that they can be a bad thing. Magic, on the other hand, is based on synchronicity and coincidences. And we'll get more into how that occurs or why that occurs in a bit. But magic without the K, psychology, they want to know that's kind of their fundamental study about how the mind works, how the mind behaves, because it's not. They want to, of course, their whole objective is to fool the people they are performing the magic trick with. Magic spell, you can however way you want to interpret it. And if you understand how the mind behaves, well, you're going to have an easier time of fooling the people you're trying to fool. On the other hand, magic with a K is about focus, how the mind manifests something. It doesn't need to. They can know how the mind behaves, but it's something a little bit more to that. How does the mind create something? You can hear like magic is a lot about alchemy, making something out of nothing, or transforming something that's not beneficial to something that is beneficial. In whatever ways that you want. You could do the reverse, but it's still how does that happen? How do you create these synchronicities, these coincidences, whether it's through ritual, whether it's through something else? But it all starts with you and your mind, and how it can get to a certain point. You could do this not just spiritually, but physically. Like physically, you can repeat something. Rote memorization. You can like visualize something, and the real question is whatever comes into your imaginary artistic mind, is that you actually manifesting that, or is that something that's already manifest and you're just being able to receive it, type of thing? We'll just kind of move on because there's a lot more that we can kind of figure out. Now, magic without the K is really based on the material. Nothing is left to chance. You could think about it as a scientist would really make a good magician, because they have to be thorough and they have to test things to make sure that what they're doing is kind of perfected, that they can that they got all the things in order for them to achieve the end result. On the other hand, magic is almost the entire opposite, where everything is left to chance. It's as though they've got everything done and they can't see the result until the result happens, so they don't know if it worked until it works. Excuse me. So it's like, well, you don't know if it's gonna work or not. It has worked before. Maybe you're not quite sure until it happens a lot, and then you've got an idea of, okay, it works, but you're basically leaving it to chance that something is gonna occur. And we'll probably get more. I'll get a little bit more into an example of that in a bit. So magic is also a means to an end. For example, if you are a good magician, you're good with cards, and you want to win a card game, and because somehow that's important to you, and you realize, hey, maybe you can cheat by messing with the deck, and therefore you cheat in order to win a card game. So that's the means to an end, whereas the Magick with a K ends to a mean rather than means to an end. That means you win a card game, but by a series of fortunate events. You don't cheat. You don't do anything in a way. You kind of have this focus, right? Intent that you're gonna win the card game, and you don't know how you're gonna do it, but somehow something happens where it ends up being that way. Whether you get extremely lucky, it's like if you play Texas Hold'em or something, and you're in a tournament, and you're all in, and you've already flipped over your cards, and you know that there's only one card in the deck that'll allow you to win. Fortunately, that one card comes up, and you end up winning and not losing, and then you win the tournament. Or things are going so bad for you, you're down to your last 500 chips, and people on average have 100,000 chips, but somehow you make it back out of 500, and you're not cheating, you're not doing anything. Somehow just things fall a certain way into your favor. Magic without the K is about being extremely skilled. It's really about training and perfecting what you do, and you try to limit the chance involved. And for example, if you are an amateur magician trying to play illusionary tricks, you make mistakes, people are going to see those mistakes and go, well, that was a pretty bad magic trick because I know what you're trying to do, or I figured it out. It's really simple. Whereas someone who uses magic with a K, you can be an amateur and things work out. You're kind of almost diving into the unknown in a bit. And it just appears like you're extremely lucky. That's almost it's a good thing, because you don't want to be extremely unlucky. Otherwise, you're somehow the magic is kind of being done to you, probably in some ways where something else is getting the benefit while you're getting the detriment. So you don't have to be extremely skilled to be someone who uses magic with a K. Magic without the K is also about reliance of the self. And I'm gonna kind of hide myself right now so you can see the differences. Reliance of the self, because when you're performing magic, you really have to rely on yourself to perform the magic, because otherwise you're not the magician, someone else is. Magic with a K, on the other hand, is reliance on a higher form of yourself or some other source. And this some other source can be attributed to what a lot of people might say are either angels, demons, God, or a form of God, or maybe it's even the all, or whatever you want to call it. Is you're hoping that whatever it is that you're intending to happen is brought to the attention of something that's higher than yourself, that can kind of initiate the motions of the world around you to get to what you want. And as far as repercussions, we may have to dive into that a little bit later, but that's something to think about, because if you can do things, you can rely on yourself to achieve that end, well, you don't have to use magic with a K. It's almost like you're doing the impossible. You're trying to do the impossible, because nothing is left. Nothing could be impossible if luck goes in your way. Somehow the world finds a way to get it, to achieve that end result. Whereas magic, you know that there's limitations. There's certain things that you cannot do because you understand that there's limits, and so you limit your possibilities. But if you want to get a little bit past that, well, you're going to have to rely on something else, something that's maybe even divine in nature. It's unexplainable, you know. Even if scientists kind of are brought to attention of whatever's going on, well, they just leave it up to well, that was just chance. And we'll get more into that too, maybe. All right, so if you're performing magic without decay, your whole self-confidence is an act. You have to really practice in how you want to present to the audience what you need to present, because you're also, and again, it's tying in together, your magic relies on distracting others, so they don't see what you're doing, your actual magic trick. You want to distract them, so you've got a little bit of that split second where you're actually performing the illusion. You want others focused on the distraction rather than what you're doing, whether it's telling them to look at something over in another direction, or that's why they always have typically traditional magicians perform magic tricks. They have a partner, a helper, and that's usually a attractive woman with scantily clad clothes in some ways, right? You want a lot of the distractions to occur, and there's a better chance of making sure the audience isn't focused on you and what you're doing. On the other hand, magic with a K, the self-confidence isn't an act, and it shouldn't be an act, because if it's not an act, well, one, it's not going to work. Two, if it does work, you're in bad trouble, because you may not go through with it. You may make mistakes, but the self-confidence is, I pretty much put it as a principle, because it needs to be authentic. I would say, I could have instead said as a principle is self-confidence as, it needs to be authentic. You really have to be confident in yourself, because it has to not take fear, negative emotions, anger. You have to almost be in control of your mind, I guess you could say. Control relies on not being distracted. Whereas the magic with a K, the magician, their tool relies on distracting others. Your tool with magic with a K is not being distracted by anything that goes around you, but focused on what you're doing. And magic without the K is really about beliefs and knowledge. You want to attain a lot of knowledge, and you want others around you to just have beliefs. Excuse me. Now, if we're talking, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about magicians that aren't performing magic tricks, but they may be performing magic spells, and with or without magic with a K. Magic with a K, it's not really about beliefs, it's not really about knowledge, it's about the truth, about what really is going on, how you can see past the knowledge of others, the magic of being used by others, whether you're involved or not, but how to get out of their magic and into your own, and not have it affect you. And it's very similar to miracles, which we'll get to in a little bit. Now, for a magician, magic without a K, you could think of it as politicians. You could think of it as people behind the curtain, whether it's they have a lot of wealth, they're bankers behind the scenes, whatever it is. CIA, FBI, agents, like government agencies, secretive societies, secretive cults, whatever it is, you want people to accept the illusion, and because they don't know any better, right? You, with your self-confidence as an act, I'm not saying you know, whatever, but those who are using that, those magicians, they're using their knowledge, whether it's true or not, again, to fool you into accepting whatever you tell them. So you can even have those who are high in religion, the same way. They tell you exactly what God is, what God does, what you need to do, and all these things, and basically you accept it because you realize you don't have the same knowledge as the magician. You don't know that they're a magician, but they're the magician. The politician says this is what they need to do because they know more, they have more knowledge than you or the general or whatever, and you have to accept what they have. Same thing with any type of authority, right? They usually say by you want to accept what an authority figure says because they're more knowledgeable about the situation, whether it's a scientific authority, whether it's a they want to say it's an established authority. So professors, doctors, nurses, whatever. I mean, you can have more knowledge than any of those about a particular subject and not even go through the normal channels that they have, university, what have you, schools. But again, they want to use, what's that term? When you, credentials, right? Like, look, this person has more knowledge than you. This person has credentials. This person has this person has that. They got this, whatever. And you're like, you know, I don't have any of those credentials, but I know more about this, and you're wrong. And here's why. And say it's something technical. So if you have a lot of good technical knowledge, someone else has credentials and supposedly more knowledge than you about it, well, you can have a little contest. In that contest, well, you created something, you've made something much faster, much better, more efficient than the other person who should have had the knowledge to have probably put you down on your ass as far as what should have been done. And sometimes that knowledge is outdated. You know, that person may have had credentials about something technical that was 20, 30 years ago. Well, they didn't keep up with a lot of the new stuff. Well, you know, you've got more knowledge than them on the newer stuff, maybe not the older stuff. So their credentials can be outdated. Just imagine you can have the best, most credentialed doctor in the 1880s. Compare that person with the, you know, not just an average doctor in the 1980s. Who's gonna actually know, do a better job? I would say. Yeah, I think a lot of people would put their money, or whatever, put their bet on the 1980s doctor. Now, Magick with a K really isn't about, well, you can perform that on others, but it's mostly performing it on yourself so you can get to the truth of the matter. And we're going to get to the other stuff in a bit. So here we go to the next one. All right, so I could appear back. So Magick, which is, you know, both without the K and with the K, versus miracles. Magick is about planning. Magick is about planning or manifesting occurrences, whereas it would not naturally occur. So whether it's a magic trick, it's not going to occur naturally in nature. So you have to create it, plan for it. If you're a magician trying to plan an illusion to people about something like we need a politician, right? They go, we need this, and they need to have this in order for it to work. And so naturally they would not achieve that without asking for it in some ways. Basically, it's a lot of planning involved. They have to trick people into giving them something in order for them to give something back. Whatever it is, it doesn't have to be politicians. Same thing with banking, with loans, money, whatever. Now, Magick with a K, I would say it's more about manifesting these occurrences where it wouldn't actually happen. For example, if you want to say, I would like to see these birds appear in this nest. So because you really enjoy listening to the birds every morning, whatever, and that nest hasn't been used by any birds for say 1, 2, 3, 4, however many years, and all of a sudden that year where you actually intended for those birds to appear and nest there, they do. And so you would say, hey, that's coincidental. That's kind of a weird synchronicity because I was actually thinking about that. So naturally, the birds weren't going to use that nest, but something occurred where you manifested that occurrence to happen, and therefore it happened. So you would say, well, that could have just been plain luck. You don't know really, but still, you thought about it. You're hoping for it. Miracles, on the other hand, is without any of that planning, without any of that intent or focus or manifesting. It's just a fortunate occurrence during an unfortunate circumstance. It's used in movies a lot. In movies, they call it Deus Ex Machina, where all of a sudden something swoops in, helps the protagonist, and they achieve success, and the ending comes next. It's weird. It's something that here's the thing. You really almost don't know whether someone else was using magic when that miracle occurred, because it could have. But at that point, you're also, when that miracle occurs and you're the one that's involved in it, where or you observe it, is you're going to want to look into it. You want to find the truth. Now, magic is about a physical intervention, if you're using magic without a K, or a divine intention, magic with a K. So everything is based on the material with the magician. You really want to create something and plan on something, and it's really based on logic, and if this happens, then this should happen. If that doesn't happen, then this should happen. Because knowing those two things, we get a better desired outcome. So you really want to really engineer the outcome based on what the probability is of some people doing this and some people doing that. And of course, you can attribute physical inventions, not just like technology, but with things that happen with legislation, things that happen with like voting outcomes and all that stuff. You don't really want to leave it up to science and whatever. You don't really want to leave it up to some divine being to fill in the missing parts. That's not going to work. Now, on the other hand, magic with a K, it's you really are intending something divine to kind of come in and figure things out for you in a way, right? You're asking for it, you're praying for it, whatever, and we're going to get more to that. Whereas miracles, where it's rather than in a physical invention or a divine intention, it's a divine intervention. It was not planned or manifested. It was spontaneous. It occurred, and it would be like an anomaly. It's just something weird that science may not explain. It may be something that, you can't explain because, you weren't even thinking about that outcome happening or whatever, or the result. Excuse me. So most people would call it a divine intervention because it's just too weird, too unexplainable. It's incredibly lucky, or incredibly one of those, planned or intended, whatever. But you weren't the one that initiated the whole outcome of that intervention. Magick slash magic with a K. Origin of outcome can be explained. Well, for magician, it's pretty easy because you should have planned the entire thing, and the outcome is basically the fruit of what you planned. Whereas the magician, or the magic with a K, you can explain it in some way because you were really wishing, hoping, asking, intending for that to happen, and it happened. And you could say, well, I was really hoping this happened, but you really didn't. I mean, you probably took as good amount of steps as for that outcome to occur, but the rest of it, if you probably put some statistics or probability into it, you're like, I really didn't have any chance for this to actually happen, but it did, and you can attribute it to the magic that you performed. Whereas in miracles, well, the origin of the outcome can't be explained because you had no planning involved. You had no otherwise intention of that outcome to have happened in your favor or whatever, sometimes disfavor. And maybe you ask around and go, hey, did you do this? Were you planning on doing this? It's just, you want to look into it. And of course, whenever you do, it just can't really be explained. And I'm noticing a lot of comments, and I'll get to that after. This is just one more thing, and then I'll get to chats. Beliefs, magic, and miracles, kind of going over it, and kind of ordered it in some fashion. So beliefs, if you believe what you want to believe, and it's not a belief started by others, then you have the power to change yourself and your belief based on the truth of what you discovered. You then have the power to change the beliefs of others. So in some ways, beliefs can be a good thing as long as those beliefs originate from you, and you can discover the truth of it by understanding more of it. And that's the important part, because you really don't want to believe in something that you really don't believe, and someone else had you want to believe, right? You don't know what their intention is, and you really can't find out the truth until they reveal the truth, or you reveal the truth from them or someone else, or whatever, you figure it out, right? So you also have the power to change the beliefs of others by discovering the truth of what you believed in. I mean, you just accepted something, and then you realize, that really wasn't true, but I was kind of close, so I accept this because it's kind of close. And then you just keep understanding more and more about where you were right or wrong, and you eventually get to the truth that no matter how many times this happens, it's like, hey, this happens. You tell it to others, whether or not they believe you or not, you can kind of expose them to the truth and the outcome that's repeated, just like scientific method, how it's supposed to be. Now, magic, if you believe in what others want you to believe, you will never discover the truth, and you will not have the power to change the beliefs of others. So think of it as a mainstream media, a reporter telling you, this is what happened. Well, you know what? Detectives don't do things like actual detectives, police officers, whatever. They don't, and even courts, right? Mainstream media might tell you something, a government person might tell you something, but those who are actually investigating it don't take what they say at face value, and it doesn't hold up in court. It actually can be used against certain individuals or whatever in court. But yeah, none of that stuff holds up, and they really have to investigate what's going on. And so, and that's because, well, there's probably some motive behind whatever it is that they're saying, that they want people to believe. And once it's known that, well, if you believe in it, well, without any evidence or whatever it is, and it's just because maybe you trust them or whatever it is, you kind of you fall for that magic trick. It's like, no, that magic trick is real. There's no way he could have done that magically. That person really has telepathic powers, psychic powers. They really have all this stuff. And of course, if you don't believe in any of that stuff, well, you're gonna be like, well, there's some other way they did it. Maybe there are people who are participating, they're in on it, and all this other stuff. Now, that's also the thing, is say you finally investigated, you did all your detective work, you went to court with it, and you're able to, the judge is impartial, it was actually a good thing or something, and you present the case, and it's like, hey, you were right, you investigated, you got all this evidence. Now the people, they accepted what the other people were saying, regardless of what the course outcome was and whatever. They still have that belief, they still have that acceptance in the belief of what others wanted them to believe. They're not going to change, especially if you believe in that same outcome. But now that you had a different belief because you didn't want to accept what the others wanted you to believe, you kind of want to believe what you wanted to believe, and you were going to go and make sure that was true. And then you can kind of have the power to change others, right? The difference between beliefs and having power over your own truth over those that people are saying what the truth is. So that's why in the truther community, basically you kind of know that you want people to do their own research. You don't want to leave it for someone else to tell you, I've done my research, this is the answer. If you don't accept it, well, you're wrong, type of thing. We see that all the time, mainstream media and government, politicians, all this other control systems. So that's why it's very important. Always do your own research. All right, so magic with a K. If you ask, wish, or pray for a result, and that result manifests, it may just be coincidence. Now, if it occurs consistently, then it's not a coincidence, but a realized manifestation of your intention. Know the source from which you want, or there will be consequences you may not be aware of. So, this can also apply to physical things, but it's more spiritually. So, now, say for example, every year you have a birthday wish, and that birthday wish comes true. It's like, well, you're probably thinking, I need more birthdays. And well, you're going to kind of look into it. It's like, why are my wishes coming true? Or why are my prayers coming true? And it's like, well, maybe this God really does exist, because every time I pray, and I'm in this religion, that prayer always seems to happen. Or maybe it happens when certain conditions are met or whatever it is, but there's just some sort of consistency with all these coincidences occurring, which many people say it's synchronicity. And it's like, well, that's just weird. It's almost perturbing in some aspects, but you're just like, well, we really can't test it because it's kind of like a black box, and a lot of magicians like to use black boxes. Basically, boxes you can't see in. You know what's in it, but you can't show others what's in it. They just see the outcome. The inputs are there, and the outputs are what's seen by everyone else. But you kind of know what happens in that black box. So it's black box testing. You can still test it, but it's not going to be something that's scientifically, like a scientific method is going to be, it's not going to be helpful, because even though the outcome is consistent based on what your intentions are, you can't prove it to others. It's just something that you're going to have to just say, well, it happens with me, doesn't happen with others, I can't prove it scientifically. this is this weird. That's as much as it's gonna happen, right? Because again, you're dealing with something that's not entirely physical manifestation, physically planned, whatever. It's something outside of that. Now, miracles is in a different boat. It's like you didn't even ask for it or wish or pray for certain things, but that result, all these results keep intervening in your favor. So there's some benevolent divine source that's protecting or working with you, and you don't know what it is. Like, for example, within the spectrum, the believe, I choose not to believe, but certain things I have to accept, even though I sometimes may not have knowledge of it, but I try to obtain more knowledge. I'm basically always trying to achieve the truth. What is the truth of all this that's going on? How can I really accept it with not just blindly, but have a real basis as for why this is really occurring, in a logical sort of view. But then, if we're going to go about it logically, all we can say is, well, it's just some form of anomaly. It's just something that happens and I can't explain it. But I just want to keep trying to figure it out, gain more understanding of it, and see if I'm right or wrong, whatever it is. You just keep trying to find what the truth is. So in these miracles, you will not know what the divine source of that protection is. Well, maybe, but it means you are here for a purpose. It would be in our best interest to find out what that purpose is. And again, not my best interest or your best interest, but it's a collective type of thing. Maybe not for some people who are wanting the opposite, people who have their own selfish motives and whatever. It's probably not in their best interest. But I find miracles happen. And if you're going to ask me, do I believe in a God? I really don't. Do I have a religion I'm associated with? No, I do not. So why do I believe that there's this benevolent divine source protecting me? Because, well, for one, I'm not really asking for protection. I'm not really intending or focusing on anything that is resulting in what's going on with me. Yet somehow things that should be happening to me that's not good, well, it's not happening. It's almost like imagine if everyone around you is getting sick with the flu and going to the hospital. It's like, you're not sick with it. It's like, what's going on? It's like, everyone should be getting sick. It's like, well, it's not like I was asking for me not to get sick. It may have just been, hey, you just go about your normal day. And then this happens, and it's like, well, that's coincidence. It's very coincidental, like Magick with a K. I'm like, oh, well, why did this happen to me? Why was I so lucky over others? It's like say if it's a plane crash or car crash, it's like everyone else got hurt, you didn't get hurt at all. You were just in that right spot in the right moment, whatever that they want to say, and you're good. Or you're a kid and you're growing up and you're doing these things that you probably shouldn't have been. You weren't causing harm to anybody, but someone else as a result wanted to cause harm to you, and somehow everything went your way, and you were able to get away from that harm. That was kind of like a miracle in some ways. Or you fell into water that was freezing, where you couldn't swim out of, you couldn't get out of because there's just ice, and somehow someone happened to be around to see that happening and help you out of that situation. It's kind of a miracle. It's like no one else is out there, just that one person happened to be out there. It's like, why would they be out there for any particular reason? Eventually you might want to go talk about it and ask, Like, why were you out there that moment of time? And I actually did ask one person when that happened to me. It's like, I don't know. I just kind of felt for a walk in this bad weather. So these miracles happen, and therefore, sometimes you can't figure out why or who's behind it or what's behind it, but that happened, and therefore you have to know that there's a purpose for that to have happened to you. And what's that purpose? You have to figure it out. You want to figure it out. It's not just in your best interest, because, well, if you're divinely protected or whatever, it doesn't matter. Your best interest is something higher than yourself. So you don't really have to worry about it. But obviously, there's a reason for it, and that reason isn't a self-motivated reason. Just like I don't know. I just have to attribute it to that because, well, I don't know. That's just it. Anyways. Any of this to happen. It's almost like I don't want to cast a spell on people and have people be under my spell, even though it gets people out of a different spell. I just want people to dispel all the magic that is occurring and have them create their own spells or whatever. So they have their own freedom, they have their own will power and all this other stuff. So there's nothing for me there's no reason for me to be a magician, in whether it's playing tricks or casting spell, as being those behind in power, being the puppets, leading the puppet strings of others. No need to perform magic with a K, because these miracles happen to me without any intention behind it. Just like my last ayahuasca experience, I had no intention going into it. And as a result, I got my final outcome. That was I don't have to go back to learn more. I figured it out. And it's so I don't need to perform magic with a K as well, because I don't need to ask or wish or pray for end result. The end result seems to manifest, intervene in my favor. Maybe not the way that I may want it, because it would be nice to be comfortable in whatever journey I'm having. But, I'm not asking for comfort. I'm just going about what I'm trying to do. And hopefully it happens, I guess. It's difficult. If I did perform magic and really get good into it and whatever, is like, well, what's going to be the repercussions of it, and how can we trust these divine entities or divine sources, whether it's your higher self or not, to do what it is that's good, if you like to be in that duality. And, I'm not talking about good, evil. I'm talking about just good. I don't know how to explain that. A lot of these things I can't really explain, and that's the whole point, is trying to get to the point where we can explain it, but we may never explain it, because however long we've been in whatever this thing called reality is, no one else has kind of really figured it out and done what was supposed to be done to not get to the point where we're at now. Or maybe It has been. Who knows, right? It's just kind of all up to just a big unknown. I mean, you can have the most knowledge about magic with a K or magic without the K for yourself, but you don't know how many other people are performing these things that have an effect on you. But, you know, all right. So it's going to go back and look at some chat. That's kind of it. Sorry, I kind of really go longer than I do. All right. So let's look at some of the... I'm starting from the very back. If I can. Let's see. Okay. All from YouTube. Garden Gnome, haven't seen you in a while. I kind of had it. Well, weird that you showed up on this one. Some people create tulpas as a form of higher self. Here. If I do this, you guys can see. Alright, maybe you guys can't. Never mind. Bonifacio Rios. Fortune tellers, very broad answers. Garden Gnome, using oracles, etc. is about waking up parts of your mind which allow one to realize certain patterns, either consciously or unconsciously. This can allow one to predict events, etc. I could understand that. You should only use oracles for your own benefit. You would have to know someone very well for it to be any use when applying it to someone else. Palm readers, Beneficial Rios, palm readers would fall under what? Using tarot cards. Robert K. Reappeared like magic. Oh, it's probably talking about this Zoom thing. Garden, I wouldn't trust someone else to read tarot, etc. for me. The point is to open one's own mind up to patterns. I like that. Good idea. Garden, the symbolism contained in tarot cards, etc. is reflective of a deeper understanding of human nature that developed over hundreds of years, maybe longer. In that sense, it's like old religious texts. Yeah. Plain truth. How are you doing today? I burst a cloud today. The plain truth. What does that mean? Oh, he goes, I also watched a movie called Moon. It's great sci-fi. I watched that when it came out in movie theaters. It was good. I like it. That guy's a good actor. Also has some interesting occult stuff behind it too, if you really look. All right, Robert P. Russell Brand used to say he's always looking for signs. Maybe seeking is part of the magic. Yeah, seek signs, but based on where you're looking for those signs, you may have a better understanding of what you're working with, what those what is trying to work with you, whether it's in nature or if it's things in like technology. I really don't see signs in technology. It's usually nature. But yeah, whatever it is that you find these signs, it's based on where you're looking to find those signs. And interesting. Magic seems very material, physical, like you said. Magic that's without K. Magic with a K seems almost astral, divine, spiritual. Yes, that's kind of where I see it. And Bard Gnome, it's hard to tell what the nature of time actually is too. I'm sure that it is impossible to perceive other moments in time. Moments in time and space, that is, things we shouldn't be able to perceive according to common knowledge. Beneficial Rios, our mind seems to not age or stays in a certain period of time, or the body perceives time differently. Robert P. I've heard things that defy people's horoscope or destinies. This is an example of divine intervention. But yeah. Garden at Beneficial Rios, our perception of time is very odd. It's not consistent. Go stand in a corner for 5 minutes, it would seem like an hour. Go to sleep, time gets very weird then. I don't believe anything else. TYT confirms. That's funny. Yeah, I remember getting high on marijuana for, I don't know, I think I've done it 3 or 4 times. But time's definitely weird there. And ayahuasca, time is definitely odd there. But, you know, even when you're not on some psychedelics, time can seem to be faster or slower than it is. And not just that. I mean, time could be just as it normally is, but certain things have it so you're just reacting to the things that are in motion uh, just as fast as it's occurring. And it's like, wow, you didn't realize you could think or move that fast, but you can. John C. Oddity, high, subconscious, accept nothing real or not, go back to your childhood. Garden Gnome. Accepting that some things are unknowable is simply part of maturing, in my opinion. I gave up on God, never quit on the Creator. Jesus Christ was real, man proven. John C. Oddity. Strange things. Okay. Strange things do happen. Found an old paycheck I didn't cash today. Freaking miracle. Garden, we can speculate about it. Of course. Yeah, I agree. Robert P. Who is the magician that makes the grass green? Seeking is the magic. Robert P. What if seeking causes things to happen, like the saying, when the disciple is ready, the master appears? Yeah, I mean, I also think of it as, you know how in, excuse me, whether, I think it was a philosopher, but I think it's attributed to science, is the observation of a thing, changes what is being observed. So when you're observing something, it turns out differently than if it wasn't observed at all, type of thing. All right. Let's see. Garden Gnome. Also, the answer to the question is you. You are the one that makes the grass green. Your mind imprints the color because color does not exist independent of your mind. Robert P. Like questions so deep. Anyways, there's a lot of good thing that you guys are commenting, talking with each other too. Anyways, that's really it. I mean, yeah, I think a lot of it is based on what you want to find out more about, find the answers to. What you want to keep asking questions about. I mean, a lot of it is, having kids is kind of a great thing because they will always ask why. And you can keep answering as much as you can answer until it goes to a point where you just say, I don't know. And then if you want to keep looking into it, you may be able to ask that question. You might be able to answer that question. I'm sorry. And then your child will go, why? And then you're going to be like, well, let me get back to you on that one. And how much of that really does that really matter? It may be up to, eventually you get to the point where it's like, well, you should find out. Because you want to, if you really want to know, you should find out. Not me. Because then it becomes to the point where, unless I say I don't know, I'm just going to give you a bullshit answer. That's just a total guess. So I don't really want to do that. I really want you to figure it out. Maybe you could tell me the answer, type of thing. So we kind of keep passing that on. But it's like, for me, as far as like the synchronicity, coincidences, the ayahuasca experience kind of opened me up to those and the signs that are involved. Finding out who I am, what my higher self wants me to be. Right? That's just a personal thing. Not just personal, but like we are collective, not just a massive collective. It's a intimate collective. The purpose, though, as far as like what I'm here to do, that's still a mystery to me. I think once I figure it out, of course, I'm just gonna probably focus on it. But there really hasn't been much to focus on aside from just making sure my family is ready, I guess. My kids and stuff like that, and helping out my wife. So that's like the primary task. Secondary tasks is just, I guess, working on myself and kind of getting others to the same point where I might be, if I'm a little bit ahead of them, or maybe I'm a little bit further back, who knows. But we need to bounce things off of each other of just kind of truth, and asking questions and figuring out answers. And there's so many things that philosophers say, or just people in general. It's like, you may not have the keys to your own destiny, but someone else may, and you may have the keys to theirs. And if we just work alone, you may not ever get that destiny to happen. And that's why we aren't alone in this world. It's not like reality has it so that you're the only person in the world. And well, one, that would be boring, and two, that would be too easy. So therefore, there's so many of us. So it's exciting because you never know who you're gonna meet, and it's difficult because you don't know who you're gonna meet you can trust that can help you, type of thing. And but can you imagine that when you do find someone you can trust and help them out and they help you out, it's almost a miracle. Because of all the people that are around the world that can do that, don't, and that will do it, it's just so few. It's awesome, and that's why it's that intimate, and not like a sexual intimacy, whatever. Just an intimate connection, it's like a familial or friendly type of connection. Is so important. Anyways, that's it. Everyone, hope you guys are well. I'll see you another time, and thank you for joining me tonight.